The first scream cut through Timber Creek like the crack of a rifle, sharp and urgent, carrying with it a terror that made the early morning mist shiver. Maren Hawke's boots splashed through the rain-slicked alley, heart pounding in her chest. She was 30, lean and quick-witted, with hair the color of autumn wheat, usually tied back in a practical braid. Her father's revolver rested under her coat, its weight familiar, comforting, and heavy with the memory of lessons long past. She had learned early that life in Timber Creek, this rough logging town nestled along the frothing, fast-moving river, gave no quarter to hesitation. The alley smelled of wet pine and sawdust, mixed with the coppery tang of blood. At its end lay a man, sprawled and trembling, his shirt soaked with rain and streaked in red. One hand clutched a crumpled note, while the other twitched feebly toward the ridge where a group of bandits had vanished moments before. "Help! Anyone!" he rasped, voice strained. Maren's boots hit the puddles harder as she knelt beside him. "Stay with me," she said, steadying her hands over his wound. "Find him." "My father." His words faltered as his eyelids fluttered and then closed, leaving Maren clutching the note. The paper, soaked through with rain and blood, bore a scrawled warning. "He knows nothing. Trust no one. Look for the one with a raven tattoo." Maren slipped it into her coat, feeling a chill of recognition and foreboding. Timber Creek's criminals were reckless, but this felt personal, as if the town itself were conspiring to drag her into a story that had waited years to find her. Across the narrow boardwalk of the town, a horse's hooves clicked against the wet timber. A stranger had appeared, tall, broad-shouldered, his black coat long and unkempt, hair tied in a leather thong that swung with his movements. Around his neck and wrists, tribal jewelry of bone and feathers caught the dim morning light. His eyes, dark and deliberate, scanned the scene with precision, finally landing on Maren. "You there," he said, voice low but commanding. "Did you see which way they went?" Maren's instincts screamed caution, yet the stranger's calm, deliberate movements suggested he was no ordinary man. "Yes," she replied cautiously, pointing toward the ridge. "But I don't think you want to follow. They're armed." He nodded once, almost imperceptibly. "Danger's my trade." And without another word, he moved, and Maren found herself following, driven by a mix of curiosity, instinct, and something she couldn't yet name. The forest that hugged Timber Creek's outskirts was thick and dark, pine roots twisting underfoot like serpents. The stranger moved silently, gliding through the underbrush as if the woods recognized him as an old friend. Maren's boots sank in mud, her heart pounding, yet she matched his pace, propelled by adrenaline. Hours passed. Shadows grew longer as the sun lowered behind distant hills. Finally, the chase led them to a derelict sawmill, smoke curling faintly from its rusted chimneys. The stolen chest lay abandoned near the foundation, but the bandits themselves were gone. The scent of charred pine mixed with the crisp air, carrying a sense of eerie stillness. Then came a voice, low, trembling, almost melodic in its fear. "Who's there?" Maren froze. There was something achingly familiar in that voice, something buried deep in her memory. The stranger's hand moved to the revolver at his hip. "Stay behind me," he whispered. Maren obeyed instinctively. Together they entered the mill, the wooden floor creaking beneath their careful steps. Shafts of light from broken windows pierced the gloom, illuminating dust motes that floated like tiny ghosts dotting the corner. Huddled in shadow was a man aged, weathered, his eyes holding the same hue as Maren's own. Recognition was instantaneous. The hollow ache she had carried her entire life, the absence of a father she never knew, gnawed at her in that instant. Before she could speak, gunfire cracked through the mill. Her heart leapt. The man in the corner fell, clutching his side. Maren screamed, Adrenaline igniting every nerve, the stranger acted instantly, dragging the injured man behind an old, collapsed support beam. Maren followed, feeling the sting of splinters in her hands but ignoring it. "Who are you?" she demanded, her voice sharp even as it shook. The stranger's eyes didn't waver. "Ashen," he said. "And you'd better be ready. This isn't over." The man in the corner coughed violently, his blood staining the floorboards. "Maren," he whispered, voice ragged. Maren froze. "Her name? How does he know my name?" "Father?" She choked, though the word felt both impossible and inevitable. He nodded faintly, gasping, his eyes brimming with pain and something unspoken, a history of choices and sacrifices too heavy for words. I had to. The bandits would return, that much was certain. Maren could feel the tension like electricity in the air. She glanced at Ashen, who seemed calm, unshaken by the chaos. His tribal jewelry glinted in the sunlight streaming through the broken windows, feathers swaying slightly as he moved to check the perimeter. Maren knelt beside her father, pressing hands to his wound. "Talk to me," she demanded. "Tell me what's happening." "Not now. Too dangerous." He rasped. "The chest? It's mine. Should have been kept safe. And now it's in danger." "And you?" Maren's pulse raced. Her father, the man she had longed to meet, the man who had vanished the day she was born, was here, wounded, and telling her that she was somehow part of a danger she had not yet fully understood. Ashen's gaze flickered toward the ridge outside the mill. "They'll be back," he said softly. "We need to move now." Maren helped lift her father, supporting his weight as they slipped through a side door into the forest. Rain had begun again, soaking them to the bone, but Maren felt no chill. The forest floor was uneven, roots and mud conspiring to trip them, but she pushed forward, driven by urgency and instinct. For the first time in her life, she felt the weight of connection, the tangible reality of a father who had survived, and a stranger who seemed to know more about the past than he would admit. Hours of tense movement brought them to a safe clearing. Ashen set up a makeshift barrier of branches and logs, keeping watch. Her father slumped against a tree, exhausted, but alive. Maren sat beside him, fingers trembling as she reached for his hand. "I waited for this," she whispered. "I waited my whole life to find you." He squeezed her hand weakly. I never wanted to leave. But I thought it was safer this way." "Safer?" she asked, tears mixing with the rain on her cheeks. "You left me alone in a world that chews children up and spits them out. Safer? I thought I could protect you." "From afar," he admitted. "But I failed." Maren's emotions roiled anger, relief, disbelief, and longing all tangled together. "Then let's make sure they don't take the chest. Let's finish this." Ashen's eyes met hers, steady and unreadable. "We will, but first, you need to understand the stakes." Her father looked at her, his gaze haunted. "The chest? It carries more than gold. It carries a legacy, and knowledge some would kill to possess. You must be ready." Maren's resolve solidified in that instant. She was ready. Ready to fight, ready to reclaim her family, and ready to face the shadows of the past that had stalked her every step. The night descended on Timber Creek, cloaking the forest in darkness. Somewhere beyond the trees, the bandits plotted their return. Unaware that their quarry had allies, now one daughter who refused to be helpless, a father who would risk everything, and a stranger whose knowledge of the past was as dangerous as it was invaluable. Maren looked at Ashen. "Tell me everything. I need to know what we're up against." Ashen's lips pressed into a thin line. "Then listen carefully, because the story begins long before you were born, and the danger is far from over." And with that, The trio settled in the clearing, the rain falling like cold silver threads through the pine canopy as Timber Creek held its breath, waiting for the dawn of revelations that would change everything. The forest was damp with rain, and the smell of wet pine hung thick in the air as Maren supported her father along the muddy path. Each step was a struggle. Samuel's legs wobbled beneath him, and his grip on her arm was weak but desperate. Ashen moved silently beside them, scanning the perimeter with eyes that seemed to pierce the shadows. Every rustle of a branch or distant snap of a twig made Maren's heart leap. But she couldn't let fear paralyze her, not now. "Father," she whispered, keeping her voice low so it would not carry, "you have to tell me. What's in that chest?" Samuel shook his head weakly, grimacing as he shifted his weight. "Not yet, first. We survived tonight." His breathing was shallow, and a thin sheen of sweat mixed with the rain on his furrowed brow. "The chest. It carries more than gold. It carries a story, secrets, that some people would kill to protect." Maren's pulse quickened. All her life, she had dreamed of finding her father, of uncovering the truth behind the shadowy disappearance that had haunted her childhood. Now here he was, broken but alive, and the knowledge that their enemies still pursued them gnawed at her stomach like a living thing. Ashen finally spoke, his voice calm but edged with warning. "They won't stop. Bandits don't forget what they can't have. Timber Creek may seem quiet, but greed and fear will draw them back." Maren glared at him. "Then we make sure they don't." Her voice had steel beneath the tremor of her fear. The three of them stumbled through the forest, following a narrow path that led toward a ridge overlooking Timber Creek. The rain had lessened to a drizzle, but the mist clung stubbornly to the ground, turning familiar shapes into ghosts. Maren's thoughts kept drifting to the note the man had clutched before dying, the one that had mentioned a raven tattoo. She had no idea what it meant, but something told her it would matter soon. Her father coughed violently, and Maren tightened her hold on him. "We're almost there," she said, though her own legs shook with exhaustion. "Just a little further." When they reached the ridge, the first faint light of dawn filtered through the mist, illuminating the river below as it carved a silver ribbon through the town. Ashen signaled for them to stay low, and Maren crouched beside her father, scanning the horizon. A group of figures moved in the distance, bandits, their dark shapes barely visible in the fog. They were carrying packs, perhaps the spoils from their initial theft. "They've split up," Ashen whispered. "Two of them near the river, the rest scattered toward the north ridge. We need to move fast if we want to intercept them." Maren swallowed her fear. "Father, can you stand long enough to help me?" Samuel nodded faintly, gritting his teeth. "I can. We have to. There's no turning back now." The trio descended the ridge cautiously, sticking to the undergrowth. The air smelled of wet earth and decay, punctuated by the occasional sharp tang of iron from Samuel's wound. Maren's fingers were slick, but she didn't let go of him. Every instinct screamed that the bandits could return at any moment, and she refused to be caught unprepared. They reached the clearing near the river where the bandits had stopped. The chest was visible, lying half-hidden beneath a tattered tarp. Maren's pulse quickened as she realized how close they were. This was their chance. Ashen crouched beside her. "We need a distraction. I'll draw the two near the river away. You and your father grab the chest and retreat. Do not engage if you can avoid it." Maren nodded, her jaw tight with determination. "Be careful," she warned, looking at him. Ashen didn't answer. He vanished into the trees with a soft rustle, his figure swallowed by the mist. Maren turned to her father. "Ready?" He gave her a weak nod, his hands trembling slightly as they approached the chest. The tarp was heavy, soaked from the rain, and Maren's arms ached as she lifted it. Inside lay stacks of documents, letters, and small wooden boxes, all tied with leather straps. There was no gold, at least not in coins, but the contents had a weight far greater. These were secrets, legacies, and clues to a life Samuel had hidden, and that Maren had spent years longing to discover. "Careful," Samuel whispered. "Everything here could destroy lives if it falls into the wrong hands." Maren's fingers lingered over one small box, intricately carved with feather motifs. Her chest tightened at the familiarity of the design. It mirrored the jewelry Ashen wore, and a cold shiver ran through her. "Father, what is this?" He shook his head. "That belongs to someone you've yet to meet. I can only hope it remains safe until you understand its meaning." Suddenly, a shout pierced the morning air. Maren froze. The bandit leader, scarred across his left eye, had spotted them. Gunfire erupted. Splinters flew as shots struck the trees and the ground around them. Maren felt her father stumble beneath her grip. "Move!" she yelled, pulling him toward the cover of a fallen tree. Bullets whizzed past, and she could hear Ashen's voice in the distance, precise and commanding, shouting orders that barely carried through the mist. The three of them ducked behind the massive trunk, hearts pounding. Samuel's hand clutched his side, but his eyes were sharp and alert. "Maren, listen. You take the chest, go north. Ashen will handle the rest." "No," she said firmly, shaking her head. "We stay together. We fight together." Her father hesitated but didn't argue. He had seen her grow through hardship, and he knew her stubbornness was a weapon in itself. Gunfire slowed as the bandits regrouped, their confusion evident. Maren seized the moment, signaling her father to move. They scrambled through the mud, chest in hand, toward a hidden path Ashen had scouted the day before. The underbrush scratched their arms, mud soaked through their clothes, but neither slowed. Every step felt like a lifetime, every breath a test of endurance. Ashen appeared as if from nowhere, silently taking down two of the nearest bandits with a combination of precision and strength. His tribal jewelry glinted in the muted sunlight as he moved, almost like a phantom among the trees. Maren felt a surge of admiration and a strange sense of relief seeing him fight so effortlessly, protecting them without hesitation. Finally, they reached a secluded cabin near the river, hidden behind a wall of thick pines. Maren pushed open the door, rainwater dripping from her coat, and set the chest down with a thud. Samuel slumped into a chair, his face pale and sweat-soaked. "We made it," Maren said, breathing heavily. "We're safe. For now." Samuel's lips trembled, and for a long moment he said nothing. Finally, he reached out and took her hand. "Maren? My daughter. His voice broke and tears welled in his eyes. "I thought I'd never see you again." Maren felt her own tears fall. The years of longing, the nights spent wondering about him, the absence that had shaped her entire life, all of it crashed down in that single, unspoken moment. "I'm here now," she whispered. "We'll face this. Together." Ashen stood silently, arms crossed, watching the scene unfold. He didn't intrude, though Maren could feel his protective presence like a shadow against the wall. Hours passed as the rain fell outside, turning the forest into a silver haze. Samuel explained as much as he could about the chest, its contents, and why it was so vital. Letters from long-dead relatives, maps marking timber routes, and small bundles of jewelry, each telling a story of a past Maren had never known. There was danger in the information, yes. But there was also a bridge to the family she had been denied. Maren listened, her mind racing to connect the dots of her life with the legacy her father had fought to protect. Every question she had asked herself over the years, the missing pieces, the whispers of Timber Creek, the sense that something was always out of reach began to fall into place. "I don't understand why you left," she said softly. "Why didn't you come for me?" Samuel's gaze fell to the floor. "I thought..." I could protect you better from afar. I made a choice, a selfish choice. But every day without you broke me." Maren swallowed her anger, letting the years of resentment and confusion mingle with relief and love. "You didn't know me," she said quietly, "and I didn't know you. But maybe we can fix that now." Ashen cleared his throat, breaking the moment with quiet urgency. "They'll come back. They know the chest is here. We've bought time, but it won't last." Maren straightened, determination flashing in her eyes. "Then we prepare. We won't let them take it or us." Her father nodded weakly, but there was pride in his gaze. "That's my daughter," he said, voice hoarse. "Strong, clever, brave." Night descended, and Timber Creek lay quiet beneath the mist. In the small cabin by the river, a father and daughter, finally reunited, began the slow, careful work of preparing for what was coming. Ashen watched from the shadows, ever vigilant, knowing that their enemies would not rest and that the next confrontation would test every ounce of courage they had. Maren sat beside her father, hands still trembling, and felt the weight of everything she had lost and found. This was more than survival now. It was reclamation. It was the beginning of a story that had been waiting decades to be told. And for the first time, she felt ready to face it. Outside, the forest whispered in the wind, and the river flowed relentlessly, carrying the secrets of Timber Creek downstream. Maren clutched the edge of the chest, eyes shining in the dim firelight, and promised herself one thing: whatever came next, she would not be alone. The morning mist had barely lifted when Maren, Samuel, and Ashen emerged from the cabin, the damp forest pressing close around them. The air was thick with the scent of wet pine and earth, and the soft rush of the river accompanied their careful movements. Every step carried the weight of anticipation. The bandits would return, and when they did, there would be no room for mistakes. Maren carried the chest with care, its contents wrapped and protected, but it still felt impossibly heavy in her arms. She had spent the night going over what her father had told her: letters, maps, and trinkets that held a story spanning decades, but now, with the real danger looming, theory and speculation mattered little. Survival was immediate. "Do you think they'll come today?" she asked, her voice low, cautious. Ashen's dark eyes swept over the trees. "They're smart enough to wait for the right moment. But they will come. Bandits like these have patience, and they have nothing else in their lives but greed." Samuel's face was pale, his wound pressed tight beneath a leather bandage Maren had fashioned. "I underestimated them," he admitted, voice strained. "I thought the chest could stay hidden, that my absence would keep it safe. But greed, it always finds a way." Maren tightened her grip on the chest. "Then we make sure we're smarter. We know the terrain. We know the river. And we have Ashen." Ashen's jaw tightened, and though he said nothing, the subtle nod he gave her was acknowledgement enough. They moved toward a clearing near the river, the current swift and dark under the morning light. Fallen logs and thick roots created natural barriers, and Ashen guided them silently, scanning the tree line for movement. Maren could feel the tension in every snap of a twig and every distant bird call. Her pulse was rapid, and yet, amid the fear, there was a growing determination. She would not let her father or the chest be taken from her dot as they reached the clearing. Ashen crouched low and gestured for them to follow. "We'll wait here. The bandits are methodical. They'll circle the river, looking for signs. This path gives us the advantage." Maren sank behind a thick trunk, chest resting on her lap, while Samuel leaned against a tree, wincing slightly from the pain. "I don't like this," he said, voice quiet. "I should be able to fight alongside you, not lean here like an old man." "You're not old," Maren said sharply, though the words were tempered with affection. "You've survived more than any of them could imagine. And besides, we have Ashen. He's not exactly the type to back down. Samuel allowed a faint smile, his eyes flicking to Ashen. That he isn't, but be careful, both of you. These men are desperate. Desperate men are dangerous. Minutes stretched into an hour as they waited. The forest around them seemed to hold its breath, leaves dripping, shadows shifting. Maren's mind wandered briefly to the chest, the letters and maps inside, the glimpses of family she had never known. Her mother had left her with stories and fragments, and now, in her father's presence, it was as if those fragments were finally forming a whole. Something's moving. Ashen whispered suddenly, his hand rising to signal caution. Maren's heart jumped. From the tree line emerged two figures, cautiously approaching. Scanning the area, bandits. The ones who had spotted them near the river yesterday. Ashen shifted slightly, positioning himself between the intruders and her father. Don't make a sound, he instructed, voice low. Let them think the clearing is empty. Maren's breath caught as the bandits edged closer, their boots sinking into the wet earth, their eyes trained on the wrong place. She tightened her grip on the chest, ready to move if Ashen signaled dot suddenly. One of the bandits stepped on a root, sending a sharp snap echoing through the clearing. The figures froze, looking around, and Maren's pulse raced. She caught a flicker of motion, Ashen stepping forward, his presence commanding attention. In a blur, he struck, disarming one of the bandits before the man could react. Gunfire erupted. Samuel's eyes widened in fear, and Maren's heart leapt as she pressed herself against the trunk. Bullets whizzed past, thudding into trees, the echo bouncing through the forest like a drumbeat of danger. Maren could see Ashen moving with lethal precision, his long coat and tribal jewelry a blur of motion. While she struggled to shield her father and keep the chest safe, one of the bandits lunged at them from the side. Maren swung the chest like a battering ram, striking him with enough force to send him sprawling into the mud. Her father's hand grasped hers, steadying her in the chaos. Good. Instinct, he panted. The fight lasted only moments, though it felt like hours. By the time the last bandit scrambled to flee, the clearing was quiet, broken only by the heavy breathing of the three survivors. The forest, it seemed, was holding its breath again. Maren sank to her knees, heart pounding, mud and rain soaking through her clothes. Samuel placed a hand on her shoulder, trembling but proud. You're strong, he said quietly. Stronger than I ever imagined. My daughter. Truly my daughter. Tears blurred Maren's vision. The anger, frustration, and longing of years, all the questions she had carried about her father, mingled with relief and pride. We survived, she whispered. We're still here, together. Ashen approached silently, glancing at both of them. They won't give up, he said. This isn't the end. But you've learned something important. You can fight, and you can survive. Samuel nodded, his face pale but determined. And now? We protect what's ours. The chest? It's not just paper and maps. It's a connection to the past. To our family. To you, Maren. Maren opened her mouth to respond, but words failed her. Instead, she reached for one of the small wooden boxes inside the chest, the intricate carvings catching the sunlight. Her fingers brushed over the feathers and tiny etchings, and she felt a strange warmth, as though the past were reaching out to her. Your mother. Samuel began, voice low. She left pieces of herself here, pieces I could not carry with me. She trusted me to protect them, and now I trust you to do the same. Maren swallowed hard, holding the box close. I'll protect it, she promised. I'll protect everything. And I want to know everything. About you, about her, about us. Ashen watched quietly, as though weighing whether to intervene, but he said nothing. He had already seen the bond forming between father and daughter, the understanding that words alone could not convey. Hours passed as they moved deeper into the forest, seeking a more secure hiding place. Samuel's wound demanded rest, and Maren's arms ached from carrying the chest, but their determination never wavered. They stopped at a secluded bluff overlooking the river, the water rushing violently below, and set up a temporary camp. Ashen scavenged supplies, while Maren tended to her father's wound, cleaning it as best she could. "Do you remember anything about the day I disappeared?" Maren asked softly, finally breaking the silence. Samuel's eyes grew distant, memories haunting him. "Bits and pieces. The morning. The chaos. I thought leaving was the only way to save you. But every step I took, every day I lived without you, I regretted it. I failed you as a father." Maren shook her head, tears running down her cheeks. "You didn't fail me. You survived. You came back. That's all that matters." Ashen glanced at them, his expression unreadable. "They'll be back," he reminded them. "And next time, they'll be prepared. You need to be ready to move quickly." Maren nodded, determination hardening like steel in her chest. "Then we prepare. We can't let fear control us." The sun began to set, casting long shadows across the forest floor. Maren, Samuel, and Ashen worked together, using the natural terrain to fortify their position. Fallen logs became barricades, thick underbrush masked their camp, and the sound of the river masked any movement. The forest around them seemed alive, protective almost, as if acknowledging the bond forming between the father, daughter, and the mysterious guardian who had brought them together. Maren sat by the fire that evening, chest heavy but heart lighter than it had been in years. She glanced at her father, who finally allowed himself a moment of rest, and then at Ashen, silently watching the perimeter. For the first time in decades, she felt a sense of hope, fragile but real. "This chest," she murmured, fingers brushing the carved wood. "It's not just about money or secrets. It's about family. About us. About finding what was lost." Samuel nodded, eyes closing briefly in exhaustion. "Yes. And now that it's in your hands, I believe it can finally bring closure to what was broken." Maren stared into the fire, feeling the warmth seep through her soaked clothes. She knew the battle wasn't over, the bandits would return, but for the first time she felt ready. Not just to fight, but to protect, to reclaim, and to finally understand the life she had been denied. Ashen, standing slightly apart, watched the forest edge, his expression unreadable. But Maren could feel the silent promise in his gaze. He would protect them, guide them, and ensure that when the time came, they would face the danger together as a unit, unbroken. The night deepened, and the forest seemed to exhale around them. Maren felt her father's hand brush against hers in the firelight, a silent acknowledgement of survival and reunion. Somewhere deep inside, she knew that tomorrow would bring more challenges, but tonight they had reclaimed a piece of themselves, and that was enough for now. The morning sun had barely broken through the fog when Maren woke to the sound of distant hoofbeats. She sat up quickly, her heart tightening. Ashen was already at the edge of the clearing, crouched low, scanning the forest with predatory focus. Samuel stirred beside her, grimacing as he pushed himself upright, his wound still aching but his resolve unbroken. "They're back," Ashen said quietly, his voice like steel. "And this time, they're coming for everything." Maren grabbed the chest, feeling its familiar weight. Her fingers tightened around the leather strap as her mind raced. She had faced fear before, but now, with her father beside her and Ashen as their silent sentinel, the stakes felt higher than ever. Not just survival, but the safety of their newfound family, their reclaimed legacy, and the fragile bond that had taken years to restore. Samuel hobbled to the front of the clearing, leaning heavily on his cane. "We know the terrain," he said, voice strong despite the pain. "We can use that. They may have numbers, but we have knowledge and cunning." Maren nodded. "Then we fight smart. We don't run, we control this ground." Ashen handed her a small bundle of ammunition and a map of the ridge lines and river paths he had memorized. "We set traps, control choke points, and force them into predictable paths," he instructed. "We'll take out the leaders first. Without their direction, the rest will scatter." Maren's pulse raced, adrenaline and fear mingling with determination. She glanced at her father. "Are you sure about this?" Samuel nodded, though a shadow of worry passed over his eyes. "I may be slow, but I'm not useless. I'll do whatever it takes to keep you safe." The sound of hooves grew louder, the bandits' movement stealthy but determined. Maren and Ashen moved silently through the undergrowth, setting traps and positioning themselves along the ridge overlooking the main path. Samuel found a spot near a natural barricade of rocks and fallen logs, keeping his distance but ready to act. The first bandits appeared, cautiously stepping into the clearing. They were unaware of the snare hidden under the wet leaves, and Ashen's precise aim brought down the lead rider before they could react. Chaos erupted as Maren fired, bullets finding their marks, and the traps triggered with snapping cords and falling logs. The bandits screamed, confusion and panic spreading like wildfire through their ranks. Samuel watched, grim determination etched across his face as he swung his cane to trip a man who had tried to flank them. "Get back!" he shouted, his voice carrying across the clearing. Despite the pain, he moved with surprising agility, fueled by desperation and the fierce need to protect his daughter. Maren pressed forward, the chest strapped securely to her back. She darted from cover to cover, taking advantage of Ashen's tactical positioning. Every movement was calculated, every step deliberate. The bandits' coordination crumbled under the combined force of strategy and sheer willpower. One of the remaining bandits, scarred across his left eye, spotted Samuel and moved to intercept him. Maren's heart skipped a beat. She raised her revolver and fired, striking him squarely in the shoulder. He stumbled, cursing, and Samuel took the opportunity to swing his cane and knock him into the mud. Ashen appeared beside her, silently dispatching two men with swift, brutal efficiency. Maren couldn't help but feel awe at his precision and calm, even amid the chaos. For a moment, she allowed herself a flicker of admiration before the next wave of bandits came into view. The fight stretched across the clearing, the river rushing beside them like a silver ribbon of danger. Splinters flew, mud sprayed, and the scent of gunpowder and rain mingled in the air. Maren's hands were slick with sweat and rain, yet her aim was steady, her mind focused. She could see the desperation in the bandits' eyes. They were not used to meeting resistance this fierce and coordinated. Finally, only the scarred leader remained, panting and wild-eyed. He backed away, taking aim at Samuel, but Ashen was faster. In a blur, he disarmed the man and pressed the barrel of his revolver to his temple. "It's over," Ashen said coldly. "Leave now, or it won't end well." The man hesitated, then fled into the forest, leaving the clearing silent but for the heavy breathing of the survivors. Maren sank to her knees, chest heaving, her hands trembling as she clutched the chest. Samuel leaned on her shoulder, exhaustion and relief etched across his face. "You did it," Samuel whispered, voice breaking. "You survived." "We survived." Maren shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "We did it together. All of us." Ashen stood a few paces away, surveying the forest before returning his gaze to them. "For now," he said quietly. "But remember, the world outside this forest doesn't change. There will always be threats. What matters is how you face them." Maren nodded, understanding the truth in his words, but for the first time in her life, she felt the weight of relief. The danger that had haunted them was gone, at least for now, and they had survived. Samuel pulled the chest closer, opening it to inspect its contents. Letters, maps, and trinkets lay neatly inside, unspoiled by the chaos. Maren picked up one of the small wooden boxes, tracing the carved feathers with her fingers. All of this, it's ours, and now, I finally understand why you fought so hard to protect it. Her father nodded, eyes glistening. Yes, and now you carry it forward. You know our past, our mistakes, and our victories. You are part of this story, Maren, not just a survivor, but a keeper of our legacy. Maren felt a surge of emotion. All the years of searching, the questions, the longing, the nights spent wondering about her father, they all culminated in this moment. She finally had him, and together, they had reclaimed something stolen from them long ago. I'm proud of you, Samuel said softly, placing a trembling hand on her shoulder. And I'm proud of who you've become. Brave, resilient, and unyielding. My daughter. Maren leaned against him, tears flowing freely. And I'm proud to be your daughter, she whispered. Finally, after all these years, we're together. Ashen moved closer, a rare, faint smile on his face. The fight isn't everything, he said. It's what you do after that counts. How you choose to live, to protect what matters, and to cherish the people who make life worth surviving. The three of them sat by the river, watching the sunlight glint off the water. Timber Creek lay quiet, unaware of the battle that had taken place in its shadows. The forest seemed almost alive, a witness to the struggle and the reunion it had nurtured. Maren opened one of the letters from the chest, her hands shaking. It was from her mother, filled with words of love and hope, explaining decisions made in the past and offering guidance for the future. As she read, she felt a sense of peace settle over her. The missing pieces of her life finally forming a whole. Samuel watched her quietly, pride and relief mingling in his gaze. She wanted you to be strong, he said softly. And you are. You've survived everything, Maren, and now? You can shape the future. Maren looked at Ashen, whose vigilant eyes softened as he regarded her. Thank you, she said simply. For everything. Ashen inclined his head. I only guided. The rest. That was all you and your father. Night fell slowly, the sky painted in deep purples and golds. The forest exhaled in the cool night air, the river singing a constant song beside them. Maren felt the weight of the chest at her side, but now it was a weight of purpose, not fear. Her father, finally able to relax, leaned back against a tree, exhaustion overtaking him. I thought I'd lost you forever, he murmured. But here you are. And I won't let anything take you again. Maren placed her hand over his. You won't, not while I live. We're together now. And that's all that matters. Ashen watched from the edge of the clearing, his eyes on the dark forest beyond. He knew his role was complete. The family had reunited, the chest was safe, and the bandits were gone. Quietly, he melted into the shadows, leaving them to the peace they had earned. For the first time in years, Maren felt the forest breathe with her, the river sing with her, and her father's presence steady beneath her hand. The past had been reclaimed, and the future was theirs to shape. Timber Creek, with its rain-soaked forests and rushing rivers, had been witness to survival, reunion, and the unbreakable bond of family. Maren looked at Samuel, her heart full. We're not just surviving anymore, she said softly. We're living, together. He smiled, the first genuine smile she had ever seen on him. Yes, together. And that's how it should have always been. The night stretched around them, peaceful and quiet. The threat had passed, the chest remained safe, and the bond between father and daughter was restored. For Maren, Samuel, and even Ashen in his silent vigil, It was a moment of closure and the beginning of a life they would face as one resilient, brave, and unbroken.